Sechas Bava Kamma Daf Kofei. We begin near the top of the daf. The Gemara refers back to the Mishnah, and the Gemara discusses the halacha we've seen in the Mishnah that when somebody has stolen something, he has to return it. It's his responsibility to make sure it gets back to the person that he's returning to. He has to follow him all the way to Madai, if need be, to get it to him. The Mishnah had said that it's only if it is at least a shava pruta. If it's not worth a shava pruta, then he no longer has to return it. Now we bring a number of halachos related to that, and the Gemara's discussion on them, and then some halachos that are just of a similar structure. So the Gemara begins with Rav Papa, two versions of this Rav Papa's halacha, which are exactly the opposite, speaking about what happens if the stolen object still exists, but it's worth less than a pruta, meaning you either returned already or he was moichel, everything except a piece of what you took, and now you have to return it, but it's worth a little less than a pruta. Do you have the halacha? You have to follow him all the way to Monday, since you actually have the thing which belongs to him. So Rav Papa, according to the first version, says yes, because even though it's worth less than a shava pruta now, it could go up in value. And according to the second version, he says no, you don't have to. It's worth less than a shava pruta. You don't have to return it. You do have to return it. But you don't have to follow him all the way to Monday. You could send it. Now, where they all agree, where the two versions agree, is the simple pshat in the Mishnah is if you don't have the object itself, that means you just owe the money, and the money is worth less than a pruta. It can't possibly go up in value, and therefore you don't have to follow Mechal. Next halacha is brought by Rava. Rava says that you can have part of the pruta being returned. So if somebody stole 3 bundles of whatever it is, and they are worth a total of 3 prutas, so it's 1 pruta each. But then the price went down, and now the 3 bundles are worth 2 prutas, so each of them is worth only 2/3 of a pruta. And then he returns 2 of them, and now he's left with just 1, which is worth only 2/3 of a pruta. Does he have to return that or not? So Rava says he does have to return that, since he has that object itself. Says Rava, the Brisa that supports that. The Brisa says if somebody stole chametz and then Pesach happened, and now the chametz is asur b'ano, so therefore it has no value. So if he has the exact chametz itself, he could return it to the owner and say, here it is, I'm returning it to you. However, if it no longer exists, the implication is, even though there is no monetary value to it, since he originally took it and it was worth a pruta, now it is worth less than a pruta, he still has to return it. And that's because since he took it at the time when it was worth a pruta, it doesn't matter that the price went down. So in our case also, he took it was worth a pruta. Even though the price went down, now it's only worth 2/3 of a pruta, he still has to return it because that object itself at the time he took it, that is what it was worth. Now, says Rava, we have a question. What happens if somebody stole 2 agudas, it was worth 1 pruta total, so half a pruta each, he returned one of them, so now he only has 1, and it's only worth half a pruta. However, when he stole it, he stole a total of a pruta. So what do you say now? Do you say that he doesn't have anything worth a pruta anymore, and therefore, and what he has now was never worth a pruta, therefore there's no theft worth a pruta that's with him, and he doesn't have to return anything? Or do we say that he never actually returned what he stole? He stole something worth a pruta that hasn't been returned, so he has to complete the returning by actually returning it. So Rava answers, there is no return, there is no theft. So Gemara says, well, if he didn't return it, then there's still theft. So the Gemara answers, he means you don't have a mitzvah of returning it, but you also were not mekayim the mitzvah of returning it. Even though you're not a thief anymore, you still haven't been mekayim the mitzvah of doing a hashava. Now the Gemara is going to have 2 other similar examples where Rava says you don't have the mitzvah, but you don't have the opposite either. So the first example is talking about the mitzvah of a nazir to shave his hair at the completion of his period of nazir. This is Gemara we've seen himself as nazir. So Rava says the halacha that if the nazir shaved off all the hair of his head, but he left 2 hairs, so as we know that does not complete the shaving, he does not fulfill the mitzvah because he left 2 hairs on. Had he left just 1, then it could be that he would have. But if he left 2, he did not fulfill the mitzvah of shaving the hair. So then Rava asks, what if he shaves 1 and then one of them fall out? Now, the Gemara first has to explain this. So Rav Acha Midifti says to Ravina, so that means that he shaved everything except for 1, and then that 1 fell out. So what's the problem? What Rav is asking, if you shave hairs 1 at a time, why should that be a shaila? He did a complete shaving, and the last one fell out. What's he supposed to do? So he explained to him, no, the question is like this. He shaved all the hairs except for 2. That is not a mitzvah of shaving, because he didn't do a complete shaving. He left 2 hairs over. Then 1 fell out. Now he only has 1 left. He shaves that off. That's also not a shaving, because it's only 1 hair. 1 hair is not a shaving. You need a minimum of 2 to be a mitzvah of shaving. So he never did a mitzvah of shaving, but there's no hair left to shave. So what is he supposed to do now? So in that, Rava says, there's no mitzvah, there is no hair, but there is no shaving. So Rava says, well, which is it? If there's hair, if there's no shaving, then there's hair. And if there's hair, then there's no shaving. So in that, we explain, even though there's no hair left, there was no shaving. There was no mitzvah giluach was not performed because he didn't fulfill it with any of these ma'asim. Next, second example of this is discussing the halacha of tumah. If you have tumah in a room and there's a hole in the ceiling, you can go up into the room above that. If you clog it up with a kli, which is not makabel tumah, it'll block the tumah from rising. Now, what if there's a hole in that kli? So, if it's a hole that makes the kli makabel tumah, for example, it's a kli cheres with a hole in it, then the tumah can still go into it and can still rise into the next room. Now, the question is, what if that hole is clogged? So now that's what we're speaking about here. So Rava says if you have the barrel, they got a hole in it, it's a barrel of wine, but the sediment of the wine clogged the hole. So that seals the barrel seals the hole in the ceiling, that seals everything, the tumah doesn't rise. Now Rava asks, what happens if you don't have shmar, you don't have the sediment sealing it, you closed up part of the hole, so now it's too small. It is no longer of the size to allow the tumah to pass through. However, the original hole was, and you haven't sealed that hole up fully. What's the halacha there? So Rav Yemar said to Rav Ashi, isn't this our Mishnah? We had a Mishnah that said, a barrel got a hole in it, and it got filled with sediment, it works. That's no proof from that, but then the Mishnah says that it was stuffed with a branch. It's not enough of a sealing until you cement the branch in place and fill in the gaps between the branch and the sides of the hole. If there are two branches, you also have to fill in the gaps between the branches themselves. So you see here that you have to cement it in place and fill in the holes. But if you don't cement it, then it's not a seal. Now, why don't you just say, that's the same as if you did a partial seal. The branch is also partial seal. So you see that a partial seal is not enough because if you have the hole there, you have to fully seal the hole. So much as though it's not a raya, it could be that the reason why you need to cement it into place is to make sure that it doesn't fall out. It has to be solidly in. However, if you made it solidly in, even if you didn't fully close up the hole, that should be enough to block the tumah. The Gemara now brings another shaila of Rava based on halacha which we've seen before. So if somebody steals chametz, let's say Shimon stole chametz from Reuven, now Shimon's holding on to the chametz, then Pesach passes, the chametz is now worth nothing. And then he swears on it, swears falsely. Later he admits. So by swearing falsely, he becomes chayav chaimish, but that's only if he owed him actual money. So the question is, since what he had, he could have just returned to him and it's worth nothing. So what he owed him was chametz, which is valueless. Does that mean that he owed him actual money? Or he just owed him this chametz, which is not worth anything? Now, simple pshat, you would say, well, the chametz is not worth anything, and that's all he has to return. So he didn't actually swear to deny anything. He only swore to deny that he doesn't owe him something which is not worth anything at all. It's valueless. So do you say, therefore, he didn't really swear falsely on anything? Or do you say, no, he did swear falsely on something, because the chametz that he's returning has value to him, because if it gets stolen from him, then he'll have to pay for it. He can only get out of having to pay for it by giving him back this exact chametz. So if he'll lose it, then he'll have to actually pay the money that it was worth at the time that he stole it. So therefore, he is swearing falsely on something. He's swearing falsely on something that has value if it'll be stolen from him. So that's the question that Rava asked. Rava doesn't answer, but the Gemara says that Rabbah was pashut him what the answer to this is. And the Gemara brings from Rabbah discussing a totally different halacha. Rabbah says if somebody has an ox, so Shimon has Reuven's ox, Reuven says he stole my ox. Shimon says, no, I didn't. Reuven says, what's it doing by you? And then Shimon says one of a number of things. He says he's any of the shomrim, and then he swears that that's what he is. So if he says he's a shomer chinam, and he swears, so then he's gaining by swearing falsely. And of course, obviously, later he admits. So he's gaining by swearing falsely because by being a shomer chinam, if it would get stolen afterwards, he would be pater, because a shomer chinam is pater on theft. But a shomer gzela, the thief, is chayav for the theft. Now, if he swore that he was a shomer sachar, so then he's pater from Shmura Mesa. If he swears that he's a shayol, then he's pater from Mesa Machmas Malacha. So in all situations, he's gaining something by swearing falsely. Therefore, he's swearing to something, and therefore he's considered to be swearing falsely on actual mammon, and he needs to pay. Now, But here you see that the only thing that he would gain, for example, in the case of Shem Rechinam, is that if it would be stolen, then by swearing as a Shem Rechinam, he doesn't have to pay. So same thing here. In our case, by the guy swearing that he didn't steal the chametz, he doesn't have to pay if it'll be stolen from him, which is the only situation which it has value, because otherwise he could just return it, and it has no value. And therefore you see that even though the only thing that he would gain is in a situation where it would get stolen, it still counts as swearing falsely. So Rabbah would say that as well. So as we go further, Rabbah said this whole sugya over to Rav Amram, and Rav Amram asked, there's a brayso that seems to give the opposite psak of what Rabbah is saying. Rabbah is saying he is swearing falsely. There's a brayso that says that he's not. And the brayso says, the pasuk when it says v'chichesh ba, and he will deny it, that's where the halacha of swearing falsely is. So that's referring to where he's swearing falsely on the ikar etzem object here, that he's swearing falsely on the fact that he has the other person's property, and he's saying he doesn't have to return it, or he doesn't have something to return. He didn't steal it. In a situation where he agrees to the etzem fact that he has the other person's property, there can't be any swearing falsely. And it gives a number of examples. It gives one case with a number of examples. So the case is, just like we began our case, with a lot more of what the answers of Shimon to Reuven could have been. So Reuven comes to Shimon and says, you stole my cow. Shimon says, I didn't steal it. And he says, well, why is it in your rishus? And he gives any of the following answers. He says, you sold it to me. You gave it to me as a gift. Your father sold it to me. Your father gave it to me as a gift. It followed my cow home. It ran by itself into my rishus. I found it wandering on the road, and I didn't know it was yours, Gemara will say. I'm a Shem Rechinam, I'm a Shem Sachar, I'm a Shoyel. Any of these situations, and then he swears and he admits, so you would think it would be chayiv. Therefore the Torah says v'chichesh ba, and this one he's admitting that it's your cow, and therefore you don't have to swear. So it's kasha, therefore, and Rabbah said in a situation like this, he would have to swear because he's gaining something. So Rabbah responded sharply, he said, Hidura, which Rashi translates as someone with no heart, or as a fool. It says that Bryce is referring to where he said to him, here, take it back. And therefore he's literally giving it to him, and he's not swearing falsely to anything significant. My case is where it was in an agam, and it was in a swamp area, it was in a field, and therefore he's saying that I don't have it, I don't have to give it to you, and he's swearing to that, and there were some denials actually happening. Now the Gemara wants to know, in all these situations, many of them, he's not saying that I have to return anything to you. So why is that called that he's not swearing falsely on the ikar? He is swearing falsely on the ikar. He's not admitting that he has that person's cow. He's saying, no, it's my cow. So for example, when he said, you sold it to me, he said, what's he admitting to? He's saying it's mine. And that's swearing falsely, 100%. So my answer is no, where he's saying, I bought it from you, but I never paid for it, and I don't have money to pay for it, so you can take the cow back. Or same thing as if your father sold it to me. Now what about if he gave it as the gift, or if your father gave it to him as a gift? That's also, he's not admitting that he owes it. So I'm saying, no, he's saying that you gave it to me as a gift on the condition that I do something for you, and I didn't do it for you, so take back the cow. So either way, he is admitting that he owes the cow back. Now, what about the case where he said he found it? So he found it, so return it. What do you mean you're swearing that you found it? So if you have to return it, return it. What are you holding on to it? That's a thief, straight up. So my answer is no, where he's swearing that I found it and I didn't know it was yours, and I wasn't able to return it to you, and he swore to that. Okay, the Gemara now starts a slightly new inning. The Gemara quotes a brayso of Ben Azai. Says there's three types of shvuas that you can make someone swear that he didn't see where your lost object is, and if he admits it, well, we'll see what the halacha is if he admits that he swore falsely. So what are the three types of shvuas? So you make him swear that he has no idea where your lost object is. Let's say your cow, he hasn't seen it. And then he admits either one of three things. Either he admits that he saw your cow, but he doesn't know who found it. Or he admits that he saw someone find something, but he doesn't know if it's your cow or not. Or he admits that he doesn't know either. So if he admits he doesn't know either, then he's not admitting anything. He's admitting that his shvu was true. So he says, okay, no, the opposite. He admits that he knew both who found it, and that it was yours. And then where it says, what's the halacha here? So then where it says the machlokes is between Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Chanina, who says that the aid is pater, even though it's swore falsely, doesn't owe you anything. The shmuel is that he's chayiv. What's the machlekes over? Machlekes is over. He could have helped you find it, but not necessarily for sure would you have been able to find it. So, in the case where he swore, in the case where he knew who found it, but not that it was yours, so you could have gone and asked that person, and maybe it would have been yours, so you would have been able to get your cow back. In the case where he saw that yours was found, but didn't know who found it, he could have told you where it was found. You could have asked around there whose it was. And in the case where he knew where both of them was, certainly you could have gone to the guy and figured out if he has yours or not. You could have reclaimed your object. Not for sure, though, because the guy could have claimed I lost it or it was taken away from me. So not necessarily would you have been able to get it back. Now, so therefore, this aid didn't directly cost you money, but it cost you an opportunity to get money. So what's the halacha about that? So the Gemara says that that's the machlekes, and it's also machlekes tanaim in a brisa. The brisa discusses if you have an eid echad who knows eidus, and you try to make him swear that he knows eidus, and he swears falsely. He says, "I don't know any eidus," but he really knew eidus. But he's only an eid echad. So an eid echad, even if he would have testified and would not have accomplished anything, could not have been mechayiv the person that you're trying to be mechayiv. However, he would have been mechayiv that person to swear. So it's possible that you would have gotten money out of it, because maybe that person would have refused to swear and you would have won the case. Therefore, by this aid not being willing to testify for you and swearing that he didn't know any aid is, he could have potentially cost you money. He didn't actually cost you for sure money, but potentially money. It's the same as our case, therefore. It was an opportunity to make it easier to get the money. And there, it's a machekes Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon who says that he can be mechayiv him, and Bava Kamma says that he cannot be mechayiv. Therefore, that's the same machlekes that we have here over something which causes money. Does that count as money or not? Now, says Gemara, says Rav Sheshes another halacha, somebody who rejects, who denies that he has a pikadon that belongs to someone else. That means Shimon says, "No, I'm not holding on to Ruvain's cow as a pikadon, as a shayla, as a shemechinim, as a seicher or a shemesachar." And he really is holding it. From the moment that he denies it, he becomes a thief. Now he's holding it as a stolen object. He's not planning on returning it. At that moment, he's now chayiv in everything, even for einzin, even in things that as a shemer he would not have been chayiv for. It says Rav Sheshes, we have a brisa that supports this. Brisa says, the Torah says, if you deny something, that teaches that there is a punishment for denying falsely. Where does the Torah warn you not to deny? It says, Loi sechachashu. Now, when we're saying that there's an einish, what einish are we referring to? Pashas referring to an einish, as far as the monetary aspect of it, that he will be chayiv for those einzin. And it doesn't say anything here about swearing falsely. It's just that if he denies, then now he's chayiv for those einzin. So we know we're referring to where he swore. So Gemara can't be referring to where he swore, because the Sefer says where he swore. The Sefer says, V'nishba al sheker. That it teaches me that if he swore falsely, there is an einish. There is in the context of einshin. Where does the Torah tell you not to swear falsely? Therefore, it says lo yisashakru. And since the Sefer is talking about swearing, the Rish is obviously not talking about swearing. So Gemara says no, both are talking about swearing. One is talking about where he later admitted. The other is talking about where witnesses came and said that he actually swore falsely. When witnesses come, then he's chayiv in einzin. When he admits on his own, then he's only chayiv in keren, chaimish, and asham. The Gemara now has two kashas on this halacha of Rav Sheshes. First, asked by Bava Kamma. We have a brisa in Masechah Shavuos, a list of situations in which a person could swear and take money. He could swear to be mechayiv someone else money. Normally, when you swear, you don't have to pay. Here's a situation where you could swear and actually get paid, and that's if the party opposite you, the one who's denying that he owes you anything, is obligated to swear, but he can't swear because he's chashud on shvuah. He has developed a reputation as being suspicious of swearing falsely. Then you're allowed to swear for your side and force him to pay. Now, what's an example of chashud shvuah? The Raisa says if someone has sworn falsely in the past, whether it's a swearing that he doesn't know a testimony, or our case where he swore that he doesn't have a bikadon, or if he just swore falsely to something which doesn't affect anyone's money. Says the Gemara, if he's swearing on a bikadon that he doesn't have it, from the moment that he denies he has the bikadon, even without swearing according to Rav Sheshes, he's already a gazlan. From the moment he's a gazlan, he's pasal eidus, he's chashad shvuah just from being a gazlan. So what does it make a difference that he had to go ahead and swear? So the Gemara answers, we're talking about where he wasn't actually a gazlan because he wasn't holding on to the animal. The animal he had left in the swamp, in the Agav and Hefker area, and therefore it wasn't considered to be stolen in his rishus. When he denied it, it was really true. He didn't have it. He was just trying to push off the case until he could go and actually get it to be able to return it. This is right that this is the situation. Rav Idi bar Avin said somebody who denies a loan that he owes does not passel him for edus, because we say nitna, that the money is really his, he just owes it, and he's denying it. He's denying that he has it, and he really doesn't have it. He's waiting until he collects the money. However, if somebody denies a pikadon, then he is passel for edus. And the second kasha is from something that Ilfa said. Ilfa said that shvua is kaina. That means if somebody swears falsely, the Gemara understands he's kaina the object, and now he's chayiv in einzin. So it implies that he's kaina as far as being chayiv in einzin only from the time that he swears, but from the time that he denies that he owes it, he's not kaina yet. Somebody gives two answers. The Gemara says again, either it was in the agam and therefore the denial is not a theft, or when we say that he's kaina, we don't mean that he's kaina to be chayiv einzin. Say that he's kaina, we mean like Rav Huna says that he actually doesn't owe it anymore. Because if he swears falsely and the other one accepts his false shvua, he no longer owes it. Rav Huna says that halacha based on a pasuk v'lakach ba v'lo yishalem, once they are lekeach, once the owner accepts the shvua, the money is not owed anymore, even if it rightfully was before.